Okay, start the music.
It's the scariest movie ever. I was like, okay, well, apparently, story of Mr. Rogers has to be very terrifying. So I was like checking the tickets for Mr. Rogers. Look, right. I'm from Poland, so I never had like I wasn't watching Mr. Rogers when I was a child, so I really don't know who he is. And
so for all she knew, Mr. Rogers could be
was a dude who was hanging with kids, which sounds bad
on the face of it. Yeah, it's creepy.
Yes.
So heard that about
Veronica, and then we were the Quiet Place and several others. Pretty much every horror movie who's like new and coming up is the scariest one right now. So we are very skeptical about it.
Well, I feel sad and I feel bad for that kind of skepticism. But how many times are you gonna fucking play us, right? Mm-hmm. It's like Lucy and Charlie Brown, the football. I promise I won't move it this time, Charlie Brown. I promise. And then they move it again. Of course, they have to say it is the scariest movie ever. They have to say that. They have to say that because otherwise, why do you see the movie? What are they going to say? Well, you know, it's not as scary as Psycho.
Just a little scary.
It's like kind of like
mediocre.
It's kind of like a new Rosemary's Baby, but you know,
but not as scary as yeah.
Right. And also, what they do is the film companies these are a lot of times in the hands of first-time directors. Get Out, first-time director. It's got Ari Aster, who I'm sure is not his real name. I'm sure his parents are probably listen. I don't think they're giving unknowns off the streets major motion pictures. I don't believe it. There are not any stars in this one, so there could be a possibility, but I just don't believe it. Whatever. That's my cynicism. The reality of it is that they have an out. They take a first-time director. If the movie succeeds, it's freakishly. If it doesn't succeed, well, then we blame it on the first-time director. Much like the guy who directed Leonard Part 6, the movie I was in 1987, which was the worst movie in 1987. And, of course, Bill Cosby, the star of that movie, blamed it on the first-time director who didn't work for another decade except for, like, directing TV commercials and so on. So they have this first-time director who also wrote the script, the auteur, right? And it's Hereditary, the scariest movie ever. Purportedly, people are so freaked out from the trailer so all these superlatives, and I feel like fool me once, shame on you. Fool me a second, third, fourth, fifth, eighth, ninth, 10th, 12th, 15th time, shame.
We are skeptical and always very naive.
Yeah. With very short memory.
No, it's not that. We have hope.
Could you name a number between 1 and 10? 12? I'm sorry, what was the range of numbers again?
11.
So that's what I told you about the movie, that it was the scariest movie ever.
Yes. So we went and we see. And well, what's the name of the director?
Ari Aster.
Ari Aster, okay.
And he's also the writer.
Yeah. I can tell that he was looking for oh my god, no, I can speak, I'm sorry. But you can tell that he is watching a lot of good movies. So I could tell like a little taste of Shining here, and a little bit of Rosemary's Baby there, and kind of like a little bit of Carrie, and then what's her name, Toni Collette is even a little bit alike, like the woman from The Shining. I'm sorry,
Shelley Duvall. As well as it recalled a lot from me, Babadook.
Yes.
In a very similar circumstance. And there was a structure of the movie that also had it feeling like Ordinary People, that fucking Chandra of a movie that beat out Red Bull the year it came out for Best Film, about, you know, a dysfunctional family, which was the seed, because I didn't want the movie. If it's a movie we know we want to see, we just go in blind because it's more gripping that way.
Well, fortunately, we couldn't hear absolutely anything he said, so because they were playing something over his voice. But yeah, I can tell that he's the inspirations he used for making that movie were totally right, and I think the story was interesting. It was kind of like a 70s story, like all those horror movies from 70s were
Nicholas Rogue, Don't Look Now,
Yeah.
house-based horror stories.
There's a kind of house-based, but also like there's something in your family that you don't know about, and then you're like discovering it, and they're like the black magic, the seances, the ghosts and shit like that. I love that. I love it.
Right. Well, it's also a pleasant rejoinder too. At this point now, nobody, I don't think, really finds slasher movies to be. I don't think I think they're thrillers. Don't think they're horror movies. I think horror, in my mind, always implies an element of the supernatural.
Yes.
And when you start to see a repeating kind of design on a necklace as a pendant, which is on the walls, it starts to be on the cover of a book, you right away know that you're in for. Invariably, in any good supernatural horror the writing was good, acting was solid.
Yeah, atmosphere was great. There was almost no special effects, which I love personally. How they were showing the supernatural everything was amazing.
All right. Well, first of all, because I know that based on my attitude and bearing and the intro that I wrote, that I have reservations. If you're into horror movies, you've seen them all. So it takes a lot and we live in a horror world. So it's hard to exceed that in a cinematic way that makes you scared. Yeah, that was a plot device. It doesn't really scare me. It doesn't scare me. But at the same time, what would scare me, a couple of things are scary. And that's things that have open antipathy to me. Right? Like a bear scares me. Bears have always scared me. Now it's somewhat a spirit animal of mine because they'll leave you the fuck alone if you leave them alone. If you bother the bears, then they won't leave you alone. And that seems to be a nice analog for living life. So you have the clip she just made was a device used by the youngest daughter in this family that is kind of
Millie Shapiro.
They have convened for the express purpose of this kid's grandmother's funeral, the mother's funeral. And I think they already lived there, or they came there to take care of her. They lived somewhere else. Maybe they came to take care of her.
No,
breastfeeding your child, it would be kind of weird. It would be a little bit weird. And it was inferred that this is one of the things that had happened.
It wouldn't be even weird, it would be fucking terrifying and disgusting.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
Right. Well, first of all, that the mother who hadn't had a kid for 35 years was lactating is a story in and of itself, but whatever. Right? It's happened. Okay. So that is a premise. They're convened at this old house in Utah, at the base of the hills, beautiful setting, and the grandmother is dead. 2 days after she dies, her grave is desecrated. We're not going to, spoiler alert,
no,
we don't need to talk about the finer points.
I don't want to say anything because everything was said is going to be like a spoiler. And I don't want to do this to you.
And we don't have to do that. So we set up right away. We acknowledge that it's impossible to make a good horror movie these days because everybody has seen everything. So you have to zig where you should zag and zag where you should zig. So to judge this movie correctly, you have to say, did it manage to do that? Were you surprised through the movie? Did it provide ample surprises so that you could say, yes, I felt legitimately scared?
Yeah, I actually was scared several times.
Oh, okay.
I can't tell you where, but we can talk about it later.
Okay, well, but it's okay. We can talk about the nature of scared, there's a difference between being surprised and scared. If my mother burst through that door right now, I would be surprised. I would not be scared.
No, but
if my mother burst through the door with a gun, I would be surprised and scared.
So like the funny thing about this movie is that the supernatural powers weren't as scary as actual real life to them. So in my opinion, it was a movie actually about living with a person who has a mental disease, and it is kind of a thing when you actually love the person and also afraid of the person because the person is unpredictable and dangerous to you, your children, and herself. So I think that was this movie was very multi-leveled. So that was the first level. The second level was actual the accident that happened in the meantime when the movie happens. The accident was terrible. And it was one of the scariest Robbie scenes. It was just fucking terrible. And then of course comes the supernatural, which there was a couple of really good scenes, like really really good. Like actually people were screaming.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. Well, what's cool about the Alamo Drawer talking, and you can inform on people. You don't have to get up and go to the lobby. You write it on a note, put it on your
Gestapo.
Yeah, it's family dynamic was just giving me knots. I think we've all kind of. It's just unpleasant, like being stuck in the middle of the worst holiday dinner ever. You know, just seeing people talk by each other in a really, really kind of crappy, shitty way, and it. You can even cut away the supernatural half of the movie, and that would have been enough.
It still would be a great the drama and thriller at the same time.
But to a certain
without the horror,
but to a certain degree, I gotta have to say that I think that this is in the same way that Get Out was described as a urban thriller, which just means it had black people in it, even though there was nothing urban about it. None of those characters were living in cities. They start in the city, but I've heard people describe it as an urban horror movie. I would have to describe this movie as like a white people's horror movie. It had all the elements. Utah, you know, it had a fucking Pottery Barn model house. I mean, straight up. The whole time I'm looking at the movie, I'm going, that's nice furniture. That's a nice into the garage. You see hiking and camping equipment. I don't know if you've seen that book.
And there's a dog.
Stuff white people like, but this is it was very much like that. So I go, oh, this is like Get Out, but for white people. Like there's hiking, there's country setting. Is that the cat?
Is that my male cat?
That's a male cat. But anyway, so this movie completely kind of played to that constituency. But that's not why we're talking about it. We're talking about it because it was shilled as the scariest movie, and I'm not really willing to get off of that. I know you want to do it in a way that's comfortable for you, right? So it's got to be comfortable for you. I'd say this did that comfortably. I believe the one place it fell apart for me, and that's again antipathy. I find beings that have antipathy or animus against me make me scared.
Yes. Ghosts in general are not that scared, but when they have mean or malicious intentions towards you, they are, or when they're angry, they are scary.
Right. So in this instance of let's see, we'll talk about this without scaring you away. In this instance of people who were involved in haunting, they had no emotional basis for being malevolent presences. That had to do with an overriding system. Does that system stick together? I think it does. I think it does, actually. I think it does. In the end, when I have to analyze, I was surprised. I wasn't scared. My standard for scared is The Exorcist. I saw The Exorcist, and I felt real existential dread. The idea that what was happening on a two-dimensional screen, and I was in a theater with a bunch of other people in Brooklyn, many of whom were laughing at the movie, didn't change the fact that I felt in physical peril. Okay, I saw The Exorcist when I was 10. I don't expect to always have, but I've had echoes of that. With Hellraiser, I have to say, I found it existentially disturbing on a lot of different levels, right? Because it dealt with multi-dimensions, which has science, right? Won the NBA championships because there were riot police on the street in front of the theater as people driving up, and we're like, fucking shit, look at the riot police. Scariest horror movie ever? No. Is it unreasonable for me to expect that it would be?
Yes.
Okay, I'll accept that. Were you scared by it?
I was. So there was a couple. I was slightly disturbed, a little bit. I felt discomfort for most of the time, and yeah, I got scared several times.
All right. Well,
But,
you know, like for me,
but it was like it was very legit. Like I think I also felt like the director probably was inspired by a little bit by Lance von Trier because it was slightly von Trier and Kubrick and I don't know who else, Polanski. Yeah, I think it was a very legit horror movie.
Well, for me, the most horrifying thing ever is being broke. So I have to say, okay, do I feel like the money that was spent on the tickets for this was well spent? And I'm gonna have to say, I don't know nothing about Scary, but I do know that I think this was money well spent. So I enjoyed my evening of cinema.
Me too.
Okay. However, this is the big moment. The big moment. I got to balance because we have a completely janky setup. I have to balance the laptop on a box so I can
freehand. It's not like you have to do it. You have a table.
Well, there's something on the table. So this has prevented me from gaining access to the table. But we're going to do our secret consultation thing and come back with a score. All right? 1, a 2, a 3. No gain. Losing you is no loss. Or something like that.
No, but to me, I would watch it again. I would love to watch it again. Why not? It was very. I mean, it was, even though I felt a little bit distressed and uncomfortable and a little scary. This is why you watch the horror movies, right? So I really liked it. I liked the theme. The music was great. The actors were great. The whole scenery was alright, and I like the story.
And we got to peek into a world beyond our world, which is fundamentally what the supernatural is. Natural world, supernatural. Got to peek into this world up here, and I found that to be sort of compelling and interesting and compelling. And it made me look up things like King Pion and so on, which you will probably do afterward as well.
And also the lack of distracting super effects was very pleasant.
And the absence of guns was very nice.
Yes, there was no guns, and it was only like a little bit gory, but just a little bit towards maybe the end. But not too much. I don't like too much gore. I just get bored of it.
Yeah. So there you go. There's our review between the 6 and the 8. You know, if your opinions cohere closer to hers, you buy the 8. If they cohere closer to mine, you go to 6. I think her way is you see it. My way is like, if you happen to be there, you're not.
No, I think you should see it. It's really fun.
Yeah. Look at me and Travis Bickle have sort of the same. It looks like we got the same hairstyle because the gray is here and the black looks like it's like a mohawk thing happening. You talking to me? I don't see anybody else here. You got to be talking to me.
I am actually.
Give it to me. Anyway, so that's the show. We have one in our back pockets that we have for next week, which is a big surprise. But as usual, recommend stuff to us if there's stuff that you want us to see. Providing it's not crap, we'll actually get around to watching it. But Hereditary, you got it. 8, she says. I say 6. The scale is on 10, just to be clear.